Today, you are going to build and deploy a full stack Next.js application using Next.js and of course React. And we're going to use Tailwind CSS for our styling. And then we're going to use Supabase for our backend as well as our authentication for this project. And then we're going to deploy our project using Vercel, which you can see I have already deployed this project. We've already created it. So I'm just recording this after the fact, but we're going to do a custom or URL that Vercel will give us here. And this is our deployed project here. So basically it's going to be a dad jokes project, which sometimes I think they're actually pretty funny. Sometimes they're not. But basically this homepage is going to use a dad jokes API here. It's going to be this iconhasdadjokes.com API to where you can get a free random dad joke. And then we are going to be able to see our joke here, click regenerate to see another one. Why did the teddy bear say no to dessert? Because she was stuffed. Ha ha, ha ha, ha ha. And then we can regenerate them. Dad, I'm hungry. Hi, hungry. I'm dad. Okay. And then we can actually now log in to save these jokes. So I'm going to click on login over here. I've already created an account here, but you can also sign up. We'll handle both of those. But I'm going to log in and then a super secure password as always, of course. But I'm going to log in here and it's going to take us back to the homepage. And now I can save a joke here. So what did the celery say when he broke up with his girlfriend? She wasn't right for me, so I really don't care at all. Haha, very funny. So we're going to save this. So we see, okay, save joke. Awesome. Let's go check our saved jokes here. And I do have a few jokes here because in development, we were practicing saving some jokes. So you can see all the saved jokes here, and we can also delete our jokes. So that one wasn't very funny. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it. We see it get removed here from our saved jokes. And then of course, we can also log out. And then when we log out, we can see that it says just log in to save your favorite jokes. So I think this is going to be a cool application here that we build with Next.js and Supabase. It's going to teach you a lot about authentication, server actions, pulling components into client components. So you don't need to make large components, client components, and you can keep those kind of just small kind of leaf components, and a whole bunch of things regarding like a basic CRUD application where you can insert jokes, read from them, delete jokes. We're going to be creating a jokes table in Supabase and also writing some different policies for those. So there's actually a decent amount that goes into just this kind of basic looking application here. And you can of course extend this and build some really cool stuff from this as kind of a starting place. So without further ado, let's dive into VS Code and start building this project. So the first thing that we're going to do here over in VS Code is run the command npx create, and that is not how you spell create hyphen next hyphen app at latest. And this is going to basically create a template Next.js application for us to get started. So I'm going to name this dad-jokes. Not going to use TypeScript. I think if you've seen my videos before, you kind of know my philosophy on this, but generally I don't use TypeScript for these videos. I do have tutorials on TypeScript, but for these projects, I generally don't, because if some people don't know TypeScript, then they can still do these. And if you do know TypeScript, I think you can probably figure how to do this in TypeScript, or at least that would be great practice for you as well. So no TypeScript, no ESLint. Yes, on Tailwind, we are going to add some styles, and I am going to use Tailwind to do that. And I am going to be copying and pasting styles that you can find in my GitHub repo linked below. But yes, I would recommend you use Tailwind if you want to do everything that I do, which is not a good general life philosophy. And let's not do an SRC, let's do an app router, and let's not do the import alias. So we're going to go ahead and let npx do its thing here. And then once it's done, I'm going to do file open and then open this project within VS Code. So my dad jokes project is open up here. We're going to close the welcome page. And the first thing that we're going to do is go to this page.js file. And right now, let's just get the UI together that is going to fetch a joke from the Dad Jokes API and just kind of show that joke on the page. So what we're going to do here is first I'm going to change this to JSX because you guys know how I feel about the JS versus JSX icon. And then here within the homepage, I'm going to remove pretty much everything. So everything except for the main tag. And then I am going to remove these styles here. So we just have an empty main tag, and I'm going to get rid of this import. So now we just have what you see here. So what we're going to do here is we are going to add a component that will basically get a joke from that API, and then it will render this component on our homepage. So when a user goes to our app, they'll basically see our homepage with a joke by default, but then a button to regenerate a joke. So we're going to do a component here called joke fetcher and then return that. And then we're also going to add our own class name to the main tag that's wrapping this. You can, of course, copy and paste the class name from my final project. In my final project, you're also going to probably see some Supabase stuff about like getting the user and passing the user to this joke fetcher, but don't worry about that right now. Just add the class name to this main tag. But now we need to go create this joke fetcher component. So within my apps, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this components. I generally like to create a components folder and then just have, my components in there. You could also do this in a bunch of different ways, but this way just kind of makes sense to me. So here within this components folder, I'm going to do new file, joke fetcher.jsx. And since this component is going to make a fetch request to the API, and it's going to allow a user to click a button to fetch a new joke, we're going to make this a client component. And I'll show you some cool stuff with client and server components as we go. We're not just going to default to making everything a client component, and most of our stuff is going to be server components, and we'll actually abstract. No, I don't think abstract is the right word, but we'll pull some stuff out into client components throughout this tutorial so we can keep the main component a server component, and I think that'll be valuable for you. So we're going to use client here, and then we're just going to export a default function joke fetcher. And then from here, we're going to set some state. So I'm going to say const joke, set joke is equal to use state, importing that from React. And then we'll initialize it to an empty string because it's just going to be some joke text. And then doing a few return statements, we're going to create a function that is going to be a function that fetches our jokes and sets our jokes. So I'm going to say const fetch joke is equal to an async function arrow curly braces const response is equal to await, and then we are going to fetch our joke API. So this is localhost 3000. We haven't started our app yet, so we're not going to see anything. But if I go to my API here, iCan has dadjoke.com/API, and you go to the endpoint section, you can see that to get a random joke, which is what we're going to do, we need to make a GET request to this URL here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this URL, come back to VS Code, and then we are going to fetch https:// has dadjoke.com/. But then as a second argument to this fetch function, we're going to add headers. And then these headers are going to point to an object that have an accept property, which is going to be application /JSON. And then below the response here, we're then going to say const data is equal to await response.json. Because when we fetch from this API, it's going to return a JSON response here, but then we need to convert that JSON to something that we can actually use within our program. But once we have that data, we can then set our joke to our data.joke. And if we wanted to be more careful about this, putting this in a try catch block is also a good idea, especially for production applications. I'll do that more here as we go there. Here, as we just get started here, we'll just leave it like this though. And then when this component mounts, or when this component first renders, we want to get that first joke and render that first joke. So to do this, we're going to create a use effect. We're going to pass in a function to use effect. And then basically we're just going to call our fetch joke function. And then we're going to run this on mount. So the second argument to use effect is just going to be an empty array. And then from here, we're just going to return a wrapper div, and then we'll have a p tag here in which we will say, if we have a joke, we will render our joke. But if we don't have a joke, we will render loading joke. There could be potential problems with this due to our error handling, but for now, I think that this is just fine. And then below this, we will create another div. And then within this div, we will actually create a button here. And this button will just have the text of regenerate. And the on click of this button is going to be our fetch joke function. So when they click regenerate, they are going to then fetch a joke. Now, in the future, we are going to add some more stuff here that is going to be like, allow the user to save a joke. And we'll add some of that logic here below this button. So if you look to go get my styles in the final project and that's what you see, then just ignore all the user related stuff right now. We'll tackle that in just a little bit. But I am going to take some styles and paste those over to my p tag like so. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my button here and paste those on here. Make sure that's spaced out a little bit. And that is all we will do for now. So I think if I didn't mess anything up here, this should be all we need right now. So let's go back to page.jsx. Let's make sure to import this. Import joke fetcher from /components joke fetcher. And then let's also do npm run dev to start our server on localhost 3000. And then let's head back to our browser here. And I'm going to refresh this page. So as you can see, we do get a joke here. The first time I got a universal remote control, I thought to myself, this changes everything. God, gotta love some dad jokes. It's actually a little bit too early in the morning for me right now to be laughing at dad jokes. So I don't find that funny, but maybe later today, if I'm recording some more of this, I'll actually find these kind of funny. But if I click regenerate, you can see I get another one. What kind of music do mummies like? Rap. Nice. Okay, I'm not going to read all these. But yeah, some of these are actually kind of funny. So you can see that we click regenerate, it generates a new joke. It just generates a random joke from, this is a real funny one. It just generates a random joke from that API. So this looks pretty dang good here, but now, this can't just be our application here. We actually have to do some stuff that's a little more complex, but not even that complex. This is not going to be anything crazy here. But what I think now makes sense to do is probably creating a navigation component. So maybe just some navigation here at the top of the page. I'm thinking what we'll have in our nav bar is we'll have our home page, which is what they'll see here. In the future, we'll add the ability to save one of these jokes. But for now, this is all they're going to see. And then we'll also have a saved jokes page to where they can see a list of all their saved jokes. And then we'll also have like a login or log out button because they're going to need to log in to Supabase or to our application using Supabase in order to see their saved jokes, because we'll need some sort of persistent data, and we're going to have authenticated users to do that. So yeah, let's go ahead and start making this navigation component. So within components here, I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call this navbar.jsx. And then we're going to export a default function called navbar. And for this navbar right now, we are going to return a nav, of course. And then this nav is going to have a wrapper div, and then we're going to have an unordered list. And then now we're going to add all of our list items. So we're going to do an li here, and wrapping the text of this li, we're going to render a next link because this is going to link to our home page. So for this link, I'm going to put the text of home within it. And then we are going to do an href. So where do we want this link to? Just the home route. So it's going to be our relative route or our home route. And then we're going to copy and paste this entire li here below. But then this is going to link to our saved jokes page. And this is going to be /saved-jokes. And then below this UL, this is where we're going to put our login or logout component, because depending on if there's a user logged in or not, this is either going to say login or logout. So right now it's just going to be a div, and I'm going to just comment login or logout, because that will eventually be a component that we create once we start getting Supabase set up. Well, we're just kind of frameworking out some of our UI right now. So now I'm going to copy and paste my styles from my project. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. You see it messes my formatting up a little bit, but I'm going to comment out this login or logout component like we did before. But now we still have the same structure here. We have our UL with our LIs with our links here, and our LIs with our links here. But currently we link to the save jokes page. That is fine. We'll create that in a second. Let's first render this navbar out, and we're going to do that within our layout.js file. So above our children here, we are going to render our navbar. So basically what we're telling Next.js here is we want to render this navbar for all of our pages within our project. And let's go ahead and change this title here to dad jokes. And we'll change the description for an app to see and save dad jokes. So we're basically telling Next.js we want to render this navbar for every single page within our component, because our root layout here, our root layout, it's going to wrap around all of our pages within our application. So every page is going to be rendered here within the children, and we're going to make sure to wrap or render our navbar kind of at the top of that page. So to prove that I'm not a liar, let's come back and we see we have our first two menu items of this kind of okayly, is okayly a word? Okayly styled navbar here with a home and save jokes. So let's go ahead and now let's just create like a template for our saved jokes page. So in Next.js, to do this, we are going to, within our app directory, we're going to create a new folder, and it's going to be saved-jokes. Now, it's important that you name your folder this because we're linking to the root, or we're linking to the route of saved-jokes. So your route name is going to match the name of your folder, because we're going to create a page.jsx file within this saved-jokes folder. And anytime you create a page.jsx file, or JS or TS or TSX, anytime you create one of those files within a folder, it's going to make that folder, the name of that folder, a public route. So /saved jokes becomes a public route when I add this page.jsx file in it. This components folder, the user can't go to /components here because there's no page.jsx file within it. It's not going to make this a public route. So just kind of keep that fundamental of Next.js in mind here. But what we're going to do for this component right now is, eventually we'll of course get the user and, get all the users as jokes and render out all those jokes from the database. But right now, all we really want to do, and we'll also add the ability to delete jokes, but right now, all we want to do is export default async function saved jokes. And then we will just return a main tag here. And then in H1, for now, we'll just put saved jokes. And that's pretty much all we're going to do right now. So I'm going to go ahead and for my project here, you're going to see some additional logic for like the user and mapping over jokes. Ignore that all right now. Just take the styles from my main tag, copy and paste those, and then take the styles from my H1 tag and copy and paste those within my H1 here. So go ahead and do that. And now if we come back, we should be able to, I refreshed it just for good measure here. But if I click on saved jokes, we see our saved jokes page. And I go back to home, we go back to the home page, save jokes, home, save jokes, home, and it regenerates a new joke every time here. So we've basically added a simple kind of navigation bar here, and we fetch a joke, we can regenerate a joke. But now comes the, it's not going to be that hard. It's just going to be slightly more complex because now we need to add user authentication to this process. And we also need to allow the ability to add jokes, to delete jokes, and to get all the jokes and show them on the saved jokes page. So right now, what we're going to want to do is head over to Supabase and start setting up authentication. So where I want you to go is supabase.com/docs/guides/auth/server-side/Next.js. And then at this page, Next.js has added an awesome updated documentation on adding authentication for server-side auth, which is what we're doing with the Next.js app router that now has server components. Because before, I kind of had to piece together some information in Next.js to kind of figure out how to do this, but they now have this in this very straightforward page. They have all the updated packages here. So I don't think I'm going to get a deprecation warning or anything like that when kind of using this stuff. So right now, what we need to do is we just are going to literally follow this step by step, and we're going to tweak a couple of these steps, like our login page here and some other things but mostly just like UI stuff. But for the most part, we're going to copy this one for one, which is really nice because I can't tell you how many docs that I've used that if we go to like follow their documentation, it ends up being wrong and then we have to redo stuff. So I'll quit talking here. I'm going to copy this command, npm install Supabase and Supabase SSR. So let's open our terminal. I'm going to open a new terminal here and I'm going to paste that to install these packages. So step one complete. From here though, now we need to set up our environment variables. So it says find your next public Supabase URL in your next public Supabase anon key. Well, we don't have those yet. So to create those, I'm going to go to my dashboard and I'm going to click open link in new tab. And then we're going to do a new project here. And then for this new project, and you might have to sign up for Supabase for free. This is all free. You're not going to have to put in any credit card information, and Supabase will allow you to do all this for free. So create a free account and then go to dashboard and then select a new project. And you should be at this screen. And I'm going to just name this dad-jokes. I'm going to type in a super strong password and then select the region that is also closest to you. And I'm going to do create new project. So this is going to create a new project here. It's going to take a few seconds to generate everything. You can see up here in the next to your name, it still is going to be saying that it is setting up everything. But what you're also going to see is a URL here, as well as an anon public. So let's go back here. And if I switch my project here, maybe I can find my dad jokes project. I can't. I only see test dad jokes here because this project isn't fully complete, like setting up with everything here. So we're going to wait a second for this, but in the meantime, we can create a .env.local file and we can paste these environment variables within our env local file. So let's come over here and in our root directory here, so on the same level is like the Tailwind config, package.json, on the same level as that, we're going to do a new file and it's going to be .env.local. And then we're just going to paste in these two environment variables here. And then we'll come back, we'll see. So this is all set up now. So I should be able to, in this drop down here, let me see if I can see dad jokes. And I still don't see it. Maybe I can refresh. And I do see it now. So I see my dad jokes project here. And you see I also did a test dad jokes. I'll probably delete both projects when I'm done with this tutorial before I make this video go live, just so no one does anything sus with my keys here. But this is the project URL and this is the anon key. So I'm going to copy the project URL. I'm going to come back and in my .env.local, I'm going to paste my URL and I'm going to get my anon key. I'm going to copy this here. I'm going to come back and I'm going to paste it within my .env file. And then I'm going to close my .env file. So very cool that they kind of set up this little bit of UI and UX here. I think that's pretty cool. But now it says to create utility functions to set up Supabase client. And let me zoom in on this a little bit further so it's maybe a little bit easier to read. There we go. So it says a client component client to access Supabase from client components, which run in the browser. And then you need to create a server component client to access Supabase from server components. So this is going to be using server actions, route handler, and stuff that run on the server. So it says create a utils/Supabase folder with a file for each type of client. Then copy the utility function for each client type. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come back and within our app directory, I'm going to create a utils folder. And then within utils, I'm going to create a Supabase folder. And then we're going to create a client and we're going to do JS. So client.js folder or file within Supabase. So client.js. I am just going to copy this and paste it in like so. We're going to remove the exclamation points here at the end because that is a TypeScript specific thing. And then we're going to export this function. So this is going to allow us to connect to Supabase from client components. But then within Supabase folder, we're also going to create a server.js file. Here, we're going to go to server.js and we're going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here. But we're going to remove the explanation points here, feel like I don't pronounce explanation points very well. We're going to remove the annotations here for TypeScript and get rid of those. And we should be all good to go here. And I'll remove that as well. So this creates a server client or a server connection to Supabase within our project. And then we can come back here and you see it uses our .env variables here within it. And I must say, this is so much easier than like me typing all this out in previous projects and stuff, because they have this documentation for you and you can easily come here and just copy this and follow along this with me. So I really didn't see a reason to type all this out. We now have a fourth step here, and this says create a middleware.ts or JS file at the root of your project. Since server components can't write cookies, you need middleware to refresh expired auth tokens and store them. The middleware is responsible for refreshing the auth tokens, passing the refresh token to server components so they don't attempt to refresh the same token themselves, and passing the refresh tokens to the browser. So middleware is going to come in really handy to manage these tokens within our authentication process. Let's go ahead and for this, we'll create this file, but I'm going to go ahead and copy it first. And then I'll come back here. And then within the root of our project, so on the same level as the env file we just created, I'm going to create another file, and it's just going to be middleware.js. And I'm going to paste what they have in their docs here. I'm going to remove this type annotation as well. So we have this ready to go. But then you can see we need to create a middleware file within our Supabase folder. So within our utils Supabase folder, create a middleware.js file. And we'll go ahead and copy this here and paste this in. And then I'll remove the type annotations that we've been doing, remove these explanation points here, string annotations, and we should be good to go here. So this middleware will handle just what I kind of read out to you earlier. And then if we come back, step 5 is actually to create a login page here. They basically use server actions to call the Supabase sign up as well as sign in function. So here, ours is going to look a little bit different because we're going to add some more pretty styles, debatable, but some decent looking styles. And we're also going to create 2 different actions here. So you can see that these buttons here, they have this form action attribute, and they call the login and sign up functions when this form is submitted. So we're going to need to create this server action here that is going to allow the user to log in. And then they also have a error page here, which we'll cover in a sec, but down below they have a sign up function here as well. So we'll create these 2 different server actions, and then we will go ahead and create an error page. It's just a very basic something went wrong. And as you can see how they use this here, basically, if there's an error when calling sign in with password, or if there's an error when signing up, it just pushes them to the error page. You know, I don't know how much I love this UX, but for the sake of this tutorial, in which we're kind of staying on track with their docs here, we're going to implement it like this as well. So let's head back to VS Code here. And what we're going to do is within our app directory, we'll create a new folder and we'll call this login. And then within our login folder, let's first create our login page. And then after creating our login page here, we will then move forward with creating the different server actions so they can actually perform logging in, signing up. So I'm going to close out of a few tabs here, and I'm actually just going to close all of them, and then I'm going to close up some other things. So within our login folder here, we're going to create a page.jsx file. And then within this file, it is going to be a client component here, because we are going to have some logic here on like if they're signing up and if they click signed up, and rendering some different things out. This is going to be a little bit longer of a component, but it shouldn't be too bad. So we are just going to make this client component because we're going to manage some React state, and we're going to export a default function called login, and then we're going to have two slices of state here. We're going to have const is signing up, as well as set is signing up is equal to use state, importing that from React and making sure to call it and initializing with false. And then below this, we're going to do const clicked sign up. And the way that we're handling this isn't the best way, but it'll get the job done for our project. And if you want to go improve this, you can absolutely do so, of course. But I think we'll get together a really good starting place for this. So click sign up and set click signing up, initializing it to false. So now that we have that state set up, let's go ahead and start on what HTML we want here. So let's return, and then we're going to return a main tag here, and we'll add some styles here in a second. But then below this main tag, we're going to render a form. And we're not going to give it an action here because we are going to call our actions from our buttons. And then we'll do a label. And this label is going to be an HTML4 email. And we'll add some styles here to all this in a second, but we'll add email address. And then below this is where we'll put our email input. It is going to be of type email. It is going to have an ID that is equal to email. It's going to have a name that's also equal to email. It's going to have an autocomplete that is equal, you guessed it, to email. It's going to be required. And we will also add a placeholder that is going to be email address. And one thing I did forget is around my label and my input, we actually want just a wrapper div. And this is mostly because of some of the styles we're going to add here in a second. I feel like I said styles in like a very southern accent there. So we'll do another div here in which we'll do a label. HTML4 is going to be password. And then within it, we're going to render out password. And then we're going to do an input here, similar stuff. Type is going to be password. ID is also going to be password. Name is going to be password. Autocomplete is going to be set to current hyphen password. And then we are also going to make it not read only. We're going to make it required, and then a placeholder of password as well. And then we'll add, like I said, we'll add some styles here to all this in a second. And then below this is where we're going to kind of do, I don't know if hacky is the right word. Maybe it is. But here below the password div, we're going to add just a little bit of logic here. So open up curly braces to enter JavaScript land. And we're going to do clicked signed up, question mark, ampersand, ampersand, then render a div. And then it's just going to say sign up link sent, go confirm your email. Now, why is this a little hacky? Because we're just assuming that no error occurs if they click the sign up and showing this to the user, which isn't necessarily the best thing to do here, but for the sake of our tutorial here, I think it'll be just fine. And I'm sure that you guys can figure out a better way to kind of manage this and to extend this into a little bit more robust user experience here. And then we'll do a div below this. And then this div is where we are going to render our buttons. So we're going to do, are they signing up? Question mark. If they are signing up, then let's do a button here. And it is going to be of type submit. And then it is going to be form action. This one is going to be our sign up function that we will eventually create. Right now, let's just keep it as just a string for now. We'll eventually make this be a sign up form action. And then here on click, we're also going to pass in a function that set clicked sign up to true. And then this button is going to say sign up. And then if they are not signing up, then we're going to render a different button. And it is going to also be of type submit here. And the form action for this one is going to be login, which we'll create in a second. And then we'll just say, is login, is that 2 words or 1 word? I think it's 1 word, right? Login? Or is it log space in? I don't know. We'll keep it as login. You, I'm sure, can figure out which one is correct. But now, below this form, what we can do is we want to also say, like, you know, how a lot of forms have the text like, don't have an account, click here to sign up. Already have an account, log in. We kind of want to do that logic here. So open up curly braces and we'll do not is signing up. If they're not signing up, then let's render a paragraph that says don't have an account, question mark, and then add a space here. We'll render a button that says sign up. And this button, the on click, is just going to be a function that is going to set the is signing up to true. But then below this, let's go ahead and copy this paragraph here. If that's not true, we are going to render another paragraph that says already have an account, already have an account. Then we are going to set is signing up to false and then make this be login. And that is it. That is all we're going to do here for our login page. So now I'm going to go ahead and add the styles here. There's probably going to be some differences in formatting here. You can definitely copy this entire page as well and paste it in here. But there might be some differences in formatting that you'll notice. So that should give us everything we need here. I'm going to just indent this a little bit here, and we should be pretty well structured here. So just make sure if you copy and paste everything I have from my project after typing it out there, that you still make sure that you have strings for this login as well as this sign up function. But other than that, I think we should be able to go over to localhost, and we see that module not found, import update session from util Supabase middleware. So let's go ahead and middleware, it's not finding this. Let me just remove it and then see if I can get an auto import here. So wanting me to import it like that. Let's see if that does the trick. And that does indeed seem to do the trick, at least for now. We'll see if we have any other issues as we go. But let's go to /login. And we see our login page here, which is good to see. Now, of course, this isn't functionally complete here because we still need to add our server actions here. So let's go ahead and come back to this project here. And we have our login page set up, but now we need to make our actions. So they added these actions within their login folder, which I actually think is a really kind of cool way to, or really good way to structure things. So within our login here, let's add a new folder, or actually not a new folder, a new file here within login called actions.js, and then we'll do our action. So we need to make this a server component here, and all this information is in the Supabase docs here as well. So don't think that I just know all this stuff off the top of my head. Like I consult the docs. If I didn't, I wouldn't know how to do any of this stuff. So don't feel bad if you don't know like all this off the top of your head. But we're going to export an async function login, which is going to accept our form data that we're going to get. And then we're going to say const Supabase is equal to create client. Now, which create client should we use here? Should we use the client side one or the server side one? Well, the string annotation at the top of this file should be a pretty good indicator. When we're using server actions, we want to use server-based clients from Supabase. So make sure you import create client from Supabase/server. And then we're going to call this function. And here we'll say const data is equal to email, and that's going to be our form data .get. And when you're getting form data that was submitted, you need to use the .get syntax. But we'll get the email, and then the password is going to be a very similar thing. It's going to be form data.get, and it's going to be our password. And then below this, we will say const error is equal to await supabase.auth.sign in with password. And then we'll pass in our data here. So we're basically calling this Supabase auth function, telling Supabase to sign us in with whatever email and password the user put in the input. Now, if we have an error, what we're going to do here is we'll first console.error the error, but then after it, we will call redirect, and we will import that from Next navigation here, and then we'll redirect them to an error page. So /error, which we will create once we finish this. But if there is no error, then what we want to do is we want to revalidate our homepage, and we'll also revalidate layout. And this is also recommended by Supabase. And then we will just redirect them. Once they log in, we'll redirect them to the homepage as well. So really, that's all we need to do to log a user in, assuming they have an account. But if they don't have an account and they want to sign up, let's export an async function called sign up. And it's going to accept form data here. And it's going to do a very similar thing that we did above here. So it's going to get the Supabase and create client here. So I'm going to just paste these in right here. And then it's also going to do const error is equal to await supabase.auth, but instead of sign in with password, it's just going to be sign up. And then we're going to pass in the data. And then all we need to do here is if there's an error, we'll console log it and redirect them to the error page. So I'll copy and paste what we did above as well. So we now have our sign up and login functions. Let's come back to our page.jsx. And instead of just hard coding these as strings, this one is going to be login, and we'll import that from /actions. And then this one is going to be sign up, imported from our actions folder. So now when they click sign up, we call that server action. Same thing when they click login. Now let's create our error page quick here. So we'll create a new folder called error in our app directory. We'll create a page.jsx file, and then we'll export a default function error. And then I don't really remember what Supabase returned here, but let's just return an H1 that says there was an error, which again, it's not the best error page in the world, but it's fine. This isn't really what we're focusing on. So with this in place, let's go back to Supabase here. So we added the error page, and yeah, they just added, sorry, something went wrong. Our page is just as good. So we added all these, so we're done with step 5. Now step 6 is we need to change the auth confirmation path. So we need to go to auth templates within our dashboard, and in our emails, we need to change this to this. So I'm going to copy this right here. I'm going to go to dad jokes, and I don't really know where this is at. So let's go to authentication here, email templates, and then we need to replace this right here. So we just have parentheses with that. Whoops, and I hit Command S. We don't want to Command S the page, but we do want to make sure that we click save here. And it should just take a second, and then it will successfully update our settings. So we are now done with step 6, but now we need to create a route handler for auth confirmation. I think this is the last step here as well. Okay, just kidding, I lied. There's step 7 and 8, but not like we're super close here. So let's go ahead and for step 7, it says create a route handler at auth/confirm. When a user clicks their confirmation email link, exchange their secure code for an auth token. So we need to do this right here at /auth/confirm/route dot. We're going to do route.js. So if we go back to VS Code within our app directory, let's create a new folder, and this is going to be auth. And let's create another new folder, and this folder is going to be called confirm. And then within our confirm folder, we're going to create a route.js file. And then here we are going to export an async function. We're going to handle a GET request. It's going to accept a request function. It's going to say const search params is equal to new, calling the new keyword and calling the URL function. And we're going to do a new URL, and we're going to pass in the request.url. And then below this, we're going to say const token hash is equal to search params.get token underscore hash. So this is us getting the token from when the user clicks their confirm sign up link. And then we'll say const type is equal to search params.get type. And then we'll do const next is equal to search params.get next. And if that's null or undefined, default it to an empty slash. And then we'll say const redirect to is equal to request dot next URL dot clone. And all this syntax is from Supabase here. So like, I don't, off the top of my head, did I know how to write all this stuff? Absolutely not. And I'll just do redirect to dot path name is equal to next, redirect to dot search params dot delete, and then pass in the token underscore hash. And then I'll do redirect to dot search params dot delete type. And then, are you guys tired of typing all this out yet? Because, you know, we could literally just copy what they have here. Let's just do this. So for the rest, we typed all this out. I've had enough of that. Let's just copy all this here, and let's go back and paste it in here. So great. Basically, if there's a token hash and a type, they get the Supabase client, which we need to import, create client here. And since this is route handler, it should be our server client. So we import that. And then we need to call supabase.auth.verify one-time password with the type and token hash. If there's not an error, go ahead and delete it and redirect them to the redirect path we specified. But if not, we're going to redirect them to our error page. We typed out some of it, but we probably did need to type out any of that. So now it says access user info from a server component, but we can do that here in a little bit. We don't really need to do this right now. Well, maybe we could. Well, first we need to, let's just try to log in right now or sign up. And if we can sign up successfully, then I can show you how to access the user information in a server and client component. So let's come back. I'm going to do a hard refresh. I don't have any errors. I'm going to go ahead and click sign up. And then I'm going to do an email as well as a password. And I'm going to click sign up. It says sign up link sent. Go confirm your email. And luckily, I do have a confirmation email here. So I'm going to click confirm my email and shoot. It says localhost is currently unable to handle this request, and we get a 500 error. So let's go back to VS Code here, open the console, and it says next response is not defined. So I forgot to import next response here. So let's come back. I don't know if I can just click this again, and I'm sent to an error page. Shoot. Let me see. Okay, I can come back here. Let me go to login, and let's check my dashboard here. And I'm going to go to users, and it says I have created a user here, and it says they are confirmed. So let's actually try that again, but I think it should work this time. Famous last words. Let's click sign up. I'm going to do a different email and my password, and I'm going to click sign up. It says there was a link sent, so let's go check. I do have a sign up link sent. I'm going to click confirm, and it does take us back to the homepage this time. And then if I go back here and I refresh, I should now see 2 authenticated users via email here. So we can now successfully create our users. But as you can see, like our UI here, it's still, and let's go back to the homepage. It still doesn't like know that there's a user, and nor do we have like a login or log out button here. So the user can't log out at all. So we need to go make sure to handle all that stuff right now. What I'm thinking we do here is in the top right of this page here, or of our kind of header here, we can add a button to where if the user is logged in, then we'll show a log out button. And if the user is logged out, it'll just say logged in. And then also on this page here, if the user is logged in, we'll show a button to where they can save the stat joke here. But if the user is logged out, we'll give them a message saying something like log in to save your jokes. And then here on the save joke page, we will also adjust this a bit to say a similar thing. So let's first focus on this button here in the top right. So let's come back. I'm gonna close out of everything that we just did here, just to clean things up a little bit. And within my components folder here, I'm gonna create a new file, and I'm just gonna call this logout or login.jsx. And for this, we're gonna export a default function called logout or login. And then now we need to get the user from Supabase to see if the user is logged in or logged out. So we're going to say const Supabase is equal to create client. Now, what do you guys think? Is it going to be a client or a server client? Well, as you can see at the top of this file, I don't have a string saying use client, which means that this is going to default to a server component here. So we're going to import it from the Supabase server and make sure to call it. And then below this, we're going to say const data is equal to await supabase.auth.get user. So we're going to get the user. Now, we need to make this an async function here so we can use await. But we're going to get the user. And now I'm going to console.log this data just to show you what data we get back. But we're going to have a user property on this data. So I'm going to say if data.user. So if there is a logged in user, then let's just return a div that has a log out button, and we'll create this component in just a second. But for now, let's comment this out. But if there's not a user, then we want to return a div that has a next link, importing that from next link, in which the href is going to be to go log in, and we're just going to say log in. And yes, we decided it was one word, I think. And I'm also going to add a class name to my link, but that's the only class that I'm going to add here. So let's add that class name there. I should be able to render this log in or log out button within our nav. So let's go to our nav bar here. And then here I can uncomment this and I can import log out or log in from my log out or log in component. I come here and I refresh my page. I don't see anything, which I'm not particularly sure why. So with my nav bar here, we are rendering this, and oh, I know why. Because we do have a user here, so we still need to make this logout button. But let's check our console here and make sure, and it's actually going to be in this console because this is server side, and it says, so we have a data object that we're console logging, and it has a user, and it's an authenticated user here. It has the associated email that I just logged in with. So we do indeed have a user here. So we're not seeing it because we're entering this if block and returning just an empty div to the page. So this is how you can get your user from a server component, and to get your user from a client component, you literally do the exact same thing, but this create client function, it would just come from our client file. So it would come from this file right here, because we would have to call create browser client instead of doing this whole thing here to where we create a server client and then we have to manage the cookies here. So let's go ahead and create a logout button. I'm going to do logout button.jsx. And for this button, the reason why I separated this into its own component is because a user is going to need to click on this button, and we're going to have to handle the click of this button, which means that we're handling some user interactivity, which means that we need to make this a client component. So this prevents me from needing to make this entire component a client component. I just abstracted, I don't think is the word for this, but I just kind of pulled this logout functionality into its own client component and then just slotted it into this here, which prevents me from needing to do like a use effect and getting the Supabase user and stuff like that. So let's just make this a client component here. And then I'm going to export a default function called the logout button. And then we are going to return a button that just says logout. Now we're also going to need to on click, we're going to pass in a function in which we are going to need to call a logout server action. And then we're also going to add some styles to this button here below that I'm going to copy and paste from my GitHub here. So now we need to create a logout server action for this button. So within the app directory, I'm going to create a new folder and I'm just going to call it logout. And then within the logout folder, I'm going to create a new file called actions.js. And within these logout actions, we're going to create a server action to log the user out. So we're going to do use server here again, and then I'm going to export an async function called logout. We're going to say const Supabase is equal to create client. And then this client, since this is within a server action, we're going to make sure to use the server client. And then we're going to say const error is equal to await supabase.auth.sign out. So we just call the sign out function from Supabase auth. And then we'll do the same thing we did earlier. We'll say if there is an error, then we will console.error the error. And then we will call the redirect function that we get from next navigation here. And it's going to be this one here. And we're going to push them to our very well-styled error page. And then we're also going to make sure to revalidate a path, importing that from next cache. And we're going to want to revalidate the login page because on the login page, we're going to have some logic that knows whether they're logged in or not. So if they log out, we want to make sure that we revalidate that page. And we might also want to revalidate the saved jokes page as well. So we'll have the same logic. And I think maybe the home page as well. So we'll just go ahead and revalidate all those pages. And then we will call redirect. And then we will push them to the login page if they log out. I guess we wouldn't necessarily need to do this, but well, let's actually not do that. We'll just leave them on whatever page they are, but we'll just revalidate all of our pages so they get logged out. So now for the logout button, we can now import this server action here from our logout actions and call this. And then in our logout or login page, instead of commenting this out, we can now import that login button. So if we come back, we should see this logout button. And then if I click log out here, I think I just logged the user out. So let's go log in. And then I'm going to log in with this user. And then after logging in, this should switch to a log out button. So I'm going to log in and then you see it switches to a log out button and it takes me to this home page here. So I think we have successfully logged in and logged out with the user. So we've basically handled signing a user out, logging a user in, and logging a user out. Now, we are going to add a little bit more logic here. So for this home page here, what I want to do is we want to basically say if the user is logged in, then they have the ability to save a joke. But if not, they should log in so they can save one of the jokes. So to do this, we're going to go to our home page here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in the user to this joke fetcher here. Because if I command click into joke fetcher, you're going to see that it's a client component. So if I wanted to get the user in this component, I could, in this use effect here, or I could add another use effect. That would probably be the recommended way to do it, in which I could get the user and I could check if the user is authenticated. And then if they are, I could add some logic here, but I think it's going to be easier to, within my page.jsx, I'm going to just get the user server side here and pass it into the joke fetcher as a prop, because I can, from a server component, pass down data into client components with some Next.js sorcery that they do. And it's actually not sorcery, but I also don't want to try to explain it right now and make myself look like a fool. So we're going to import the create client from our server file. So const Supabase equals create client, and then const data is equal to await supabase.auth.get user. And then here, and we need to make sure that this is an async function for our joke fetcher. We can just say the user is equal to data.user. And then within joke fetcher, we can now accept a user prop. And with this prop, what we want to do now is we basically want to just have some text here in which if they have a user, we want to have a button that says save joke. But if they don't have a user, then that button will say log in to save joke. So I'll say const save joke text is equal to user question mark save joke. So if there's a user, the text should just say save joke. Else, they should say log in to save joke. And then now below this kind of div right here, or actually maybe within this div right under the regenerate button, we're going to create another button here in which we're going to just have it be the save joke text. And then we're going to have an on click here, which is going to be a function in which we're going to make it an async function. And we're basically going to say here, okay, if there's not a user, then we're going to just return. So we are going to make sure that they can't click this button, or they can't call our save joke function that we're going to have here unless there is a user. But if there is a user and they click to save a joke, then we're going to await, and we could probably just disable this button as well, which would probably make more sense. So I'm going to say disabled is equal to if the user is, so if the user is truthy, that is going to make this button disabled. So that's not what we want. So we want it to be not user, which should disable this button. I'm going to keep my logic here for now as an extra safeguard, but the button should now be disabled if there's not a user. But let's await. We're going to call a function called save joke, which is going to be a server action here again. And then we would pass in the joke here, but let's actually for now just put a comment, save joke function being called. And then if that is successful, we await that, and that's successful, we will do an alert message and say joke save. And, you know, I generally don't like alerts. So you could do something like a toast message saying they successfully saved their joke or something like that. And then we'll also add a bit of styles here below, like so, that I copied and pasted from my GitHub. So now if we come back, we see that we have a regenerate button as well as a save joke button. I don't love how this looks right now. So I think what we want to do is for this div above this button, this div here, I need to add some classes here. So I'm going to go ahead and add those. So it's basically making this a flex box, justifying them to center, and it's adding some flex gap, which should separate these buttons a little bit. So since I have a logged in user, this currently says save joke. But if I log out, it says log in to save joke. And you can see I can't, like it's not the little pointy hand, it's just a mouse. But if I log in and then I click log in and I go to the home page, you see it's now the pointy hand, so the button's not disabled anymore. So it looks like everything's working correctly here. I think the next step here is actually being able to save our jokes. So this is the part to where we now need to add a joke table to our Supabase backend. So the user can then save jokes. They can also read their jokes, and we're also going to let them delete their jokes. So what we're going to do here is head back to Supabase, and then I'm going to click on table editor here. And we don't have a table yet, but I'm going to do create a new table. And we're just going to call this joke. I did some reading before this on whether you should like have your table names be plural or singular. And the TLDR is that it doesn't really matter. At least that's what I read. So I think we can just have this be joke or jokes. Either one is fine. But to me, since each row in the table represents a joke, I'm just going to call this joke as the table. I'm not going to add a description. We are going to enable row level security, which is going to restrict the access to our table. And we are then going to have to create some different policies. They give permissions to those that want to write and read to our table, but that shouldn't be too bad. But what we're going to do is, so we have an ID here by default, and we also have a created at here, which is totally fine. But now let's add another column, and this column is just going to be joke text. And we're going to make this a varchar. And then the default value, we're going to actually say that it can't be null. So this is a non-null field. So it's not going to let us create a joke table without joke text. And we're not going to give it a default value. And then we're also going to do, we need to know what user created a joke. So we're going to do user ID, and then the type is going to be a UUID here. And then we're not going to generate random. We're going to do the auth.uid is going to be the default value. So when we create a joke, we're going to default to setting the user ID to the current authenticated user. Now, we're also going to add some row level security here that says only the authenticated user can basically update these fields. So this should work out pretty well for us. So yeah, we're not going to add any foreign keys here. And you can't see it on my page, but down at the bottom right here, just off the screen here, there's a save button. So you can go ahead and click save. It should say creating new table, adding 4 columns to joke, and it should add this table. So then you should see something along the lines of this once this table is created for you. But now we need to go ahead and add our policies for inserting a joke, deleting a joke, and retrieving our jokes, which is going to be a select policy. So to do this, we're going to go to our SQL editor here, and we're going to run some SQL. And the SQL we're going to run is going to create a policy on our joke table. So we're going to run create policy, and I think I can do this all lowercase here. we're going to name our policy. So this is going to be insert joke policy. And the way that I figured out how to do this, guys, is I just Googled it. I think I used ChatGPT some as well, but I just Googled it and figured it out. Like, I'm not a big like SQL policy guy. So a lot of this stuff is just kind of figuring it out on the fly. So we're creating a policy called insert joke policy on our joke table. And this is going to be for insert. And then we're going to add a check. So with check, and then this check is going to be the user ID needs to be equal to the auth.uid. So we're saying that when we insert, the user ID that we use to insert needs to match the current authenticated user. And then I'm going to run this SQL here. And this is success. No rows returned. So we've created an insert policy, but we also need to create a delete policy as well as needing to create a select policy. So let's do the select policy, which is going to let us basically retrieve our jokes. So I'm going to say policy name is going to be select own jokes on joked for select. And then instead of with check, it's going to be using user ID is equal to auth.uid. And let's run that. Success, we didn't mess it up. And then we need to do the same thing for deleting. So create policy, and it's going to be, instead of select, it's going to be delete own jokes on joke for delete using user ID is equal to auth.uid. And we successfully created that as well. So now let's go back to our table editor here. Let's go to joke. And now you should see up here for auth policies, we should have 3. And it should be, one of them is for deletes, one of them is for inserting, and one of them is for selecting. So we should now let a user insert, delete, and select from a table if that user is the authenticated user for our application. So with this in place, we should be able to now go back here, and then we should be able to implement this server action here that is going to basically allow us to insert a new joke in our table. So let's go ahead, and within our app folder, I'm going to create a new folder called data. This data folder, it would represent like all of our interactions with our database. So say we had several tables in our database. Well, in this data folder, these would be like the server actions or the functions that we use to interact with our like persistent data. To me, I think this just made a lot of sense in my head, at least. Within the data folder, I'm going to create another new folder, and I'm going to call this joke. So this is going to be all the data operations that relate to our joke table that we have in our database. And within joke, I'm going to create a new file called actions.js. And then here within this file, this is basically where we're going to add server actions that are going to allow us to insert as well as delete jokes. So we're going to make this use server, and then I'm going to export an async function called save joke. And it's going to accept a joke, or at least joke text to save. And we're going to say const Supabase is equal to create client. And then since this is a server component, it's going to be a server client. And then const data is equal to await supabase.auth.get user. So we're going to get our user. We're going to say const user is equal to data.user. We'll say if there's not a user, well, they shouldn't be able to call this action. So we're going to throw an error saying must be an authenticated user to perform this action. So we're putting plenty of safeguards in place for this. And then we'll actually do the right thing this time, put it in a try catch block. So we'll try const data comma error is equal to await Supabase dot from. So from our joke table, and you can find all this syntax within Supabase. We're going to await Supabase dot from joke. So our joke table dot insert, and then we are going to insert an array here, in which the array is going to have an object in which we're going to set the user ID is going to be equal to the user dot ID, and then the joke underscore text is going to be the passed in joke. So we're going to try to create a new row in our joke table where the user ID is our current authenticated user and the joke text is our joke. Now this would fail if our user ID here that we're passing in right here, if this user ID didn't match the current authenticated user. So we'll say if there's an error, we'll just throw the error, but else we will revalidate path saved jokes. So we need to update our saved jokes path, and then we will just return our data. If not, we will catch an error, and then we'll just rethrow that error. So this should be our save joke function. And then here within our joke fetcher component, we can go ahead and add this function here. So what we can do is we can do await save joke from our save joke actions, and then we can call this function with our current joke state. And then if once we await that and we don't throw any errors, we will get to this line here to where we can say joke is saved. So now let's come back. Let's go to our home page. I'm going to refresh for good measure, and I'm going to click save joke. And then I see joke saved. I'm going to click OK. Let's head back to Supabase here, because in our save jokes page, we aren't getting our jokes yet. That will be what we do next. Let's check our table here, and let's check our joke table. And we should see one new row here for our current authenticated user that says, what kind of music do mummies like? Rap, for the joke text. So we have successfully now saved a joke in our database, which is pretty cool. So we just saved this joke here. Now, from here, we need to be able to go to our saved jokes page and see our saved jokes. So now let's try to retrieve all of our jokes from this page. So back in VS Code here, I've opened up our saved jokes page, and what we want to do is start adding our logic to get our jokes here from Supabase. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first say const Supabase is equal to create client, and this is going to be importing that from our server client because this is going to be a server component. And then we want to say const data, and then we're going to rename this destructure syntax to user data, and then we're going to set that equal to await supabase.auth.getUser. So we're going to get our user data from Supabase, and then we're going to create a variable called jokes, set that to an empty array. And then we're going to say if we have a user data.user, then we want to say const data, but renaming that to jokes data, and error are equal to await Supabase dot from our joke table, in which we are going to select all of our jokes. So this is basically like saying select star from our joke table for our current authenticated user. And then once we have our data here, we'll say if there's an error, we will console.error, error fetching jokes, and then we will also console log the error. Regardless, we'll set our jokes to our jokes data. So at this point, it'll either be an empty array or it will have our jokes. And now below this, we want to create a header for this page. We don't want it to just say saved jokes. We want it to say saved jokes if they're authenticated user and they have jokes. So we'll say the default is let header is equal to saved jokes. But if there's not, so if not jokes dot length, if there's not any jokes from this user, then we want to set the header is going to be equal to save some jokes to see your jokes. Very, very creative. But we also want to check if there's not a user data.user, then we want to say the header is equal to login to save your favorite jokes. And then here below in our H1, we can set our header to be this text here within our H1. Now we can try to map over our joke. So we're going to create a UL here. And within that UL, we're going to open up a pair of curly braces to enter JavaScript land. And then we're going to say jokes.map. We're going to accept a joke within our map function. And then we're going to return a div that is going to have a key of our joke.id. And then within our div, we're going to render out an li that is just going to be our joke text. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add some styles here as well. So I'm going to copy and paste it from my GitHub here, but feel free to do the same thing. The only thing to make sure of here is I'll show you in a second. So I just pasted those in here and you're going to see I have a delete joke button here. We're going to just comment this out for now because we'll implement that in a second. But this should have adjusted our save jokes page. So let's save this, come back. I'm going to refresh and I see save jokes. What kind of music do mummies like? Rap. Let's go back to save jokes here, or let's go to our homepage here. I'm going to save another joke. I'm going to click OK. And this is actually pretty funny here. I'm going to go over to save jokes and I see I now have 2 jokes. So we're successfully adding and retrieving our jokes here. Let's try to log out and see what this page shows us. So we log out and we see login to see your favorite or to save your favorite jokes. So we'll log in here and then we should see our homepage and we should see our saved jokes. So we can now see our jokes, but now what if we don't like this joke anymore? Well, we need to add the functionality to now be able to delete a joke. So from here, what we're going to do is implement this delete joke button. So we're going to go ahead and within our components, we're going to make a delete joke button. And we're pulling this out into its own component because it's going to be a client component, but I didn't want to make this entire page a client component. So we're just going to implement a client delete joke button. So for this delete joke button, like I said, it's going to be a client component here. And then we're going to export a default function called delete joke button, in which we're going to take a joke ID as a prop. And then we're just going to return a button that is going to have the text of X. So it's just going to be like an X to delete it, but it's going to have an on click here, which is going to be a function that's going to call a delete joke server action with a joke ID. And then we're going to add some classes here to this button as well. So And I realized this should just be a delete joke function that I haven't created yet. So now I'm going to save this, but within our data and joke folder, enter your actions. And this is where we're going to add an action that is going to allow us to delete a joke. So let's go ahead and below this save joke, we'll export an async function called delete joke. It's going to accept a joke ID. And then here, we're going to do the same thing that we did above. So we're going to just copy this right here, paste this in to get our user. And then if we do have a user, what we're going to do is do a try catch block again, which I'm going to say const data, comma error is equal to await supabase dot from joke. And then we're going to call dot delete. And what are we going to delete? Well, we're going to match and then pass in an object in which the ID is the joke ID. And then the user ID is going to be the user.id. So we are going to, for this user, we're going to delete a joke with the joke ID. And then we're going to do an if error throw error. But then if there's not an error, we want to revalidate our saved jokes path. And then maybe I'll also show you why we revalidate things. So I'll do saved jokes. And then within our catch block, we'll catch an error and then we will throw an error. And we can also do the same thing that we did earlier where we return our data here. So here's our delete joke function. Let's make sure to use it within our delete joke button. And then within our page here, we can uncomment this and use our delete joke button component that we import above. So now if I come back to my saved jokes and I refresh for good measure, I should see this X here. And if I click on it, I should see my joke gets removed. And in my table here, if I refresh, I should only have one joke here. So let's go ahead and go to my home page. Let's save another joke. It says joke saved. I come back, I have two jokes. Let's go to save jokes. Let's delete this one. Let's come back. I now have one joke here. And then, as I mentioned earlier, what if we forgot to revalidate this path here? Well, if I comment it out and I come back to our page and I refresh and I click X, you're going to see it looks like nothing happened here. When in reality, it did delete our joke here, was removed from our table. But since I didn't revalidate it here, to see my change, I need to refresh my page here. So we need to make sure to revalidate our saved jokes page after performing these actions. So like if you're doing some of this yourself and you're finding that like an action isn't working, but like the data in your database is being removed, it might be because you haven't revalidated your Next.js cache. So just make sure that you're staying on top of that. So with that, I mean, that basically gives us the ability to save some jokes here. Let's save a couple jokes and then I'll regenerate a new joke. I'll save another joke. I'll look at my saved jokes. I'm going to log out with this user. I'm going to log in with a different user and make sure I don't see any jokes for my new user here. So I'm going to log in and go to save jokes. I don't see any jokes for this user. So I'll save a joke. I'll come back. I'll go to save jokes. I do see this joke now. I'll log out. I'll log in. I'll log in with my other user, and I think I should see 2 jokes now, and I do see 2 jokes. So we've effectively implemented getting our jokes from that API, saving them, deleting them, and reading from those jokes. So the last thing I want to do here is actually just deploying this application. So I'm heading over to github.com here, and I'm going to assume that you have a GitHub. If not, I would definitely recommend you creating one. I'm going to create a new repository here that I'll call dad jokes. I'll make it public so all of you guys can also see my finished product here. I'm going to copy git remote add origin here, head back to my terminal. I'm going to open a new terminal. I'm going to do git add, git status, git commit -m, add project, and then I'm going to git remote add origin, dad jokes from what we just copied, git push, get an error, git push set upstream, and this should have just added it to GitHub. So I'm going to head back to GitHub. I'm going to refresh, and I do indeed see my dad jokes project. But now I'm going to head over to Vercel and deploy this project. So I'm at my Vercel.com homepage. This is totally free. So if you haven't created an account at Vercel.com, go ahead and create a free one. And then once you log in, head to your overview, and we're going to go add new project. And then you might need to connect to your GitHub here, which is super easy to do from Vercel. You should have some just easy prompts to follow to do this, but you should see your GitHub. I'm going to click dad jokes, which I just created. So I'm going to import that. But now we just need to do a couple of things here. So for environment variables, we need to go ahead and add our environment variables. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to delete this project when I'm done with this. But I'm going to come here for my env variables. I'm going to take next public Supabase URL, and then I'm going to put that as the key. And then the value is going to be this value right here. And I'm going to paste that in like so. I'm going to add that one. And then I need to add my other key, which is this anon key. Paste it here. Come back. And then I'm going to take all this, copy it, come back, and paste it here. And now I'm going to click deploy. So this is going to take a few seconds here, but it should deploy our project using Vercel, and it should give us our own custom URL. So you should eventually get sent to this page that says, congratulations, confetti is flying. And then I should be able to go click on this project. And I do indeed see our project here to where we have everything going here. Let's go ahead and try to log in with our user. And I click log in, and I do indeed get logged in here. And I should still have some saved jokes, which I do indeed have here. So that is our project. Thank you so much for tuning into this, and I will catch you in that next one.